I was raised in a religious household, very Catholic. But Catholicism, they can play it fast and loose, you know. You were raised in a very Christian environment. And your early work in comedy was sort of in Christian comedy, wasn't it?
Yeah, I started in churches when I was 16 because you can't go up in clubs until you're 18. So I hadn't been in a comedy club until I turned 18. And once I did, I was like, oh, this is like where comedy's supposed to happen.
Not in church.
Not in church, as it turns out. But, you know, I think that maybe that was good as a foundation. I worked really clean for like the first 6 years probably that I did stand-up. And then when I turned 22, I actually got fired from a church gig opening for a big church comic because of something that I tweeted that ended up being a joke that I did on your show.
But this is the joke that got you sort of kicked out of the Christian comedy circuit. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it was like the last church gig that I was still doing was opening for this guy, and they called me and were like, hey, like, you can't be tweeting stuff like this. Like, that's not good for our audience.
Can you tell us the joke?
The joke was
even today, I'm, as an adult, very sexually conservative. Not that I'm bad at sex, okay? I'll have you know, in bed, I am a wild animal, all right? Yeah, way more afraid of you than you are of me.
That's such a good joke.
And I was so happy that it ended up on your show.
Yeah.
Because in my first late night set on your show, which was like, by the way, all I wanted for years was to have a Conan set.
Oh, that's nice.
And it was maybe the first moment that I felt like, oh, I might be a real comedian now. It was like, that's what I wanted for the first half of my career, like the first 6 years. And then once I got that, I was like, okay, we can set some other goals now. But that is literally all I wanted to do. And then after that, all I wanted to do was tour theaters. And now I've done that. And so now everyone's like, what do you want to do now? I'm like, I think I did everything.
I'm done.
I did Conan and this tour.
I'm 26 and it's over. Yeah, you tweet that joke out. They got upset. But I maintain that the limitations are great. I think limitations are underrated. Whether the limitations are self-imposed or imposed by your environment, it's really good for you in a way because you had to work clean and you had to work within this very specialized environment. So you weren't taking a bunch of shortcuts that I think a lot of other people would take, especially at a young age.
Yeah, I think that's true. But then also, coming up in church, I don't think you're exposed to as much stand-up as you are when you're doing open mics and clubs in a bigger city.
Right.
Because then you're more aware of like what's already been done and what's kind of a hacky premise. And doing in church gigs, nobody's really worried about that because it's such a small, sheltered scene, I suppose you could say. So, you know, I look back on it and I think in some ways it was really good. I was also going up in front of like hundreds of people for 15 minutes and a lot of times getting money. And I'm like, this is stupid. That should not have been happening at all. But by the time
was the money good? Is the money
church money's amazing.
Do they take
really good.
Do they pay you like in ones and is it right from the collection plate?
I mean, look, they put it in your G-string, but it's blessed. The ones are damp with holy water. No,
I was paid in communion wafers for my first 3 years.
You get a lot of free wine. You get a lot of... That's what's so crazy is like I had to have a conversation with my team, my manager and agents where I was like, I can't do churches anymore. And they were like, what about this money? And I was like, I can't. Like I'm being dishonest with them because I'm not a Christian anymore and I'm not going to be clean all the time anymore. I'm going to speak how I speak in clubs and talk about what I want to talk about. And if you are a comedian performing in churches, they want you to be that all the time. Yeah. And that's why they're all, you know, middle-aged married guys because they're Christian and that's their lifestyle and they talk about their family and going to church and, you know, good for them. That's who should be doing it. But I didn't want to be somebody who was pretending to be something that I wasn't for some sort of success or financial stability. But yeah, the money was really good and you're kind of like, yikes. Like, so then I just did like 8 cruise ships the next year to make up for it.
So you went from Christianity to cruise ships.
I have done, sometimes I feel like an imposter and then I go, I've done literally every gig that you could possibly do. Like I've done churches, I've done corporates, I've done clubs, I've done colleges, I have done cruise ships. I have done everything. And I'm glad that I have, because now I know there are so many different ways you can make a living as a stand-up. I mean, when I did cruise ships, I was miserable. I could not have done more than I did. But the guys doing these cruise ships, they're happy. That's their life. They're like, in 3 months, I have a land gig. I'm like, a land gig? I gotta get out of here.
It's a way different. The bar is very different.
Yes.
To be on land. What? In 6 months, terra firma. Yeah. No, but the nightmare that I've always heard about cruise ships, and I've never performed on a cruise ship.
You'll get there.
I'll get there. Trust me. I know my trajectory all too well. I will be on a cruise ship, but
you'll be on a cool Illuminati cruise ship, though.
Yes.
For celebrities.
Yes, where the real money is.
Yes.
They'll all be wearing robes.
Yes.
I'll be nude. But
Why?
That's my preference. That was not anything they requested. When other people are wearing robes, I want to be nude. But no, the horror apparently of working on a cruise ship is that if it doesn't go well, you are trapped with the audience for 6 more days.
Yep.
I've spoken to comedians who it didn't go well, and so they stayed in their room the rest of the time, because if it doesn't go well at a club or in a theater, you're gone, you move on. You literally get out of town the next day. This is quite a different experience where you're trying to go get your spaghetti and meatballs.
Yeah.
And you're in line, and the people on either side of you hate your fucking face.
Yeah, I would sleep all day until about 5 o'clock, which was right when the buffet opened. And then I would get to the buffet right when it opened, so there weren't a lot of people there yet. And I would eat very quickly, and I would put some fruit in a purse. And then I would go back to my room, and I'd squirrel that away. And then I would go do the shows, and then go back to my room, and then wait for everyone to go to sleep. And then I would go to the gym and walk around the ship while it was empty and everyone was sleeping. I can't believe I got depressed on these, right?
I'm always obsessed with where the good crowds are. Are the crowds
Royal
pretty good?
Caribbean.
Are the crowds on a Royal Caribbean
Yes.
decent?
Yes, they are. Because the ones that I did, at least, they had a comedy club on the ship, which is, it feels like a comedy club in Toontown, where it's this is what a comedy club looks like, but it's
Right.
And you only had to do 25 minutes with another comedian, and it's free. It's one of the free things you can do on the cruise ship because it's all inclusive. So it was by the end of the week, everyone had most of the people were coming twice. So the first half of the week, these guys would have the 25 minutes they did, and then the second half of the week, they would have the ship 25 that they did, which was all about what ports we stopped in and the buffet and all their ship jokes.
Yeah. Diarrhea.
Yeah, of course.
You got to get to diarrhea.
Who's got the Imodium, right? And it was, but I did some that there was no comedy club. You were just in the piano bar, and you would perform stand-up, and it felt weird, and people were walking in and out, and there were kids at some. And so Royal Caribbean was one that when I did it, they had a comedy club. It was adults only, and you only had to do 25 minutes as opposed to 45 or something. So I only did maybe 7 weeks of it, and not consecutively, but by the end I was these are the only ones I want to do.